I am Natalie with Appodeal, and these are all great panelists. I'm not going to introduce them, just going to let everybody introduce themselves, but meet Tarika Soni from MoPub, Stanislav Sinchenkov from Mail.ru, Marcelo Ballestiero.
Correct.
Yeah, from Libring, and Paul Callan from Yeahmobi. So you guys, if you can go over and say a few words about yourselves.
I can start.
Yeah.
I'm working as a product growth manager, specifically looking at video across MoPub, both on the supply and the demand side. However, my background is definitely more user acquisition and retention, so I do come from the demand side.
I'm Marcelo, founder and CEO of Libring. I've been working with big data my entire life, and I know that companies spend like 90% of the time trying to collect and clean data, and 10% only analyzing it. That's why we created Libring.
Hello. My name is Stanislav. I work for Mail.ru. It's pretty big Russian company. I had a developer background. I came from Game Insight and Zeptlab, gaming companies, and now I run business development and publisher relations at MyTarget. It's the name of the advertising platform inside Mail.ru, and we help developers to work on Russian market.
And I'm Paul Callan. I'm at Yeahmobi. My background comes from being on the business side at both Zynga and Kabam, so some experience on the developer side. Made my way to ad tech, realizing when I was at Kabam, I kept getting pitched, and I felt I didn't know it well enough, so I joined ad tech to start making the pitch and be one of the people to say our SDK is completely easy to install, don't worry about it.
That's great. So our panelists come from all the different backgrounds, and just to start off the panel, guys, there are multiple ways to monetize in applications. As all you know, since you come from a publishing side and advertising side, what are the trends that you see in the current market right now? Something that stands out to you most? Whoever wants to start.
I would start with my own baby, rewarded video. I think rewarded video, both from the demand and the supply side, whether it's a publisher trying to monetize the app, or if it's a user trying to retain the app or acquire a new user, I think it's a great format. It's not what it used to be 5 years ago. It's more an opt-in by nature now. It's interesting to be in the space, considering we've come a long way with rewarded video as an incentivized format 5 years back, and now it is something of more around publishers being able to place it within the gameplay. So they're very innovative ways of trying to monetize and retain your users through rewarded video.
So it sounds like the rewarded video is the main trend that you see in the market.
I would think so, yes.
Yeah.
Both sides.
So across all of the formats that you use in MoPub, this is the most popular?
I wouldn't say that. I would say it is a growing format, both on the supply side as well as the demand side. Interestingly, there are more and more, most people here actually, specifically for gamers, think of rewarded video as supply is equal to gaming, demand is equal to gaming, which is not necessarily true, is what we see on MoPub. There are a lot of brands that are looking for that 30-second opt-in exposure, and they're willing to pay the kind of eCPMs you get in the network side of the business as well. So that, I feel like, is a myth, is what we're seeing. Agreed that a large chunk of the share is still sitting with gaming, but from an advertising side, more and more brands are falling in love with rewarded video because they get that 30-second exposure, which they don't get in a lot of other ads.
I would agree with that. I'd say the mix that we see a lot is performance, of course, so game installs, but brand is starting to come on more strong with that. And the ability to capture the user for 15, 30 seconds is worth a lot.
Yeah, although the rewarded video is the new kid on the block, I think it's playable ads also play. There's a lot of companies using playable ads. Although you need to be careful with it, because in regions where the internet connection is not that fast, it's a little bit tricky to use it. But I would say playable ads are coming strong.
Well, this is a very ad-focused panel. Let's switch off the ads here. Anything else that we see in the market? Come on, the market is big. There is also premium, there is freemium, there is in-app purchases, there is even subscriptions that are coming in. Anything that stands out to you?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I wanted next to say, that if we speak about outside of ads, the next thing that is booming now is subscriptions. And not only it's important to implement it wisely in your game just to get the new revenue stream, it's also important for developers to think about it creatively to get support from platforms, because they like the good implementations of subscriptions, and they like when developers decide their business model correctly, not just putting ads everywhere or just in apps everywhere, but if it fits, that's green light.
Are there any specific type of applications that will fit this model, or what would you suggest that whoever would be using it for their apps?
I think it's still like a whole new area to explore, because it's still something new for the developers, and they're experimenting. And there are lots of examples when you get like new boosts or something cool to keep engaged players, to get log in every day, not just to make most of your subscriptions when you paid something, but also to run higher retention.
I just want to go ahead.
I think besides subscriptions, also IAP obviously still is the big elephant in the room. From a revenue perspective, I think IAP still has the largest lion's share in terms of how revenue is built for ads. So in the casual gaming space specifically, I remember reading recently that 35% of the revenue is coming from ads, but then just 35% still, right? Casual gaming still has a lot coming from IAP. And then I believe also the hardcore, midcore games typically have about 20% of the ads coming from revenue, from ads revenue, from monetization. Again, the lions, the whales within the app for midcore, hardcore definitely contribute about 70% of the revenue, but then there's still an untapped audience that comes only through monetization.
In terms of split of advertising and in-app revenue, there are several reports. I think one of the most famous was from AppsLayer, when they measure the split of the those type of revenue. And the history was that in-apps was 2-3 times higher. It was 70% in total split on average, not just per general certain category, but in general. And well, that seems understandable. But I saw several projections and several researchers with ambitious plans that ad revenue will overcome in-app in this year, but I'm not sure whether they're accurate or not.
Well, I think that it's important to say that advertisement probably is more efficient for some types of games. For example, advertisement, the kids don't mind ads as much as adults, so that's a great format for the kids apps, but maybe not for some of the adult apps and so on. So you have to be very careful about what exactly monetization model, what is that? What monetization model you're using. Don't use that, whatever you do. Yeah, so, and also another thing about the subscription, I was just giving myself a talk in LA about the kids app subscription. Actually, it's a really good monetization for kids apps specifically, as adults don't mind spending money in terms of kids education. So that's another thing to consider. So if there are audience that does all different kind of applications, this is also another thing to consider.
Yeah, I would agree. A lot comes down to knowing your audience well.
Yeah.
There are casual games I've seen for coloring where it's free to play, there's some ads, but the main driver is subscription because it's a content release every month. So there's the value of what you bring to your audience and knowing your audience well, knowing what region is going to work well with advertising, just buying outright.
Yeah, totally. So we did have a chart prepared, but probably not going to come in. Anyway, we've done remote research prior to this panel, and it looks like in 2017, rewarded videos was the most profitable or the most effective method of monetization. It brought the most profit across all apps, which is really interesting. Maybe we can email chart to everyone later on. But what is that you can share? Probably Tarika will be most eager to talk about it. Is it like the format that's going to fit all of the apps? Like, what are the downsides? I want to focus on the downsides of this format. What is that we should be cautious about?
So that's actually a really good question, because the concept of rewarded video being a one-size-fits-all, I don't think it exists. There are certain categories that it definitely works hand in hand with, and a lot of the developers now, considering the kind of revenue you make out of rewarded video, and the fact that it doesn't intrude upon your users, it actually complements you moving from level to level while you're getting the reward as well. I think a lot of developers, at least from what we're seeing, have started thinking about rewarded video placements before developing the game, so that it's not bandaged on top of what already exists, and it's a part of the holistic view of monetization. The downsides is that I've actually had a very recent experience from one of the casual gamers as an advertiser, actually as a publisher. What they did is accidentally had, instead of 4 rewarded videos per user per day, they went to 8 rewarded videos per user per day. Now what that does to your audience is it cannibalizes your IAP audience, and they did make a lot more money with the 8 per day videos that they were monetizing with eCPMs. It could never catch up to the cannibalized IAPs. So I think that's the danger to something like a rewarded video, where if you feed your audience so many videos, they're probably going to churn at some point when they're saturated from the ads. So it's really healthy to understand, to segment your organics or IAPs away from rewarded video, even when you're considering building it. So I think that's one key factor that I realized, which didn't work very well.
But isn't it the thing about this format that this is an opt-in format, so people don't really churn on this format? Isn't that the thing?
So I wouldn't say, so the churn is going towards you're already paying IAP users if they're being served an ad again and again and again. I think there's a threshold as well. Typically what I see is about 4 to 5. I've even seen like the notices that have higher than 5 per user per day, and it works for them. So again, to your point, I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all, but then at the same time, I don't think rewarded videos for every gamer either.
We have a very interesting case from one of our customers in Finland. They created an entire business model behind.
What is the name of the customer?
Future Play.
And the app?
And they created this concept of view to play, that they created the entire business behind rewarded video. So they stimulate players to use or to watch videos to get credits and to progress in the game. It's impressive, the results, and it's very addictive. They did an A/B test, and they saw that when they don't show ads or they don't allow gamers to see ads, they have complaints from the gamers. They want ads to go and to progress in the game. It's impressive.
That is actually very cool. Making monetization a part of the gameplay, that is something that not a lot of developers are thinking about, and it's a big point that affects the user retention and also LTV. If you make the monetization a part of the experience, that will only benefit the developers and the users.
Yeah, I agree. Getting down to your design, what's your core loop? What are the plans? Advertising or IAP or both, any way you want to get creative, the earlier you can start planning on that and how it's going to fit into the loop, what the players are going to experience, the better. Just plan ahead and don't forget to test.
I'd like to mention one more downside of rewarded video. It's so easy to fall in love with that format because everyone is keep telling that it's awesome, it's great for retention, it's like everywhere. But as Tarek mentioned, and that was a very good point, that if you dig deeper, sometimes it could be not that good in terms of like cannibalization. Yes, it might be good for retention, but it's important to have balance with in-apps. So my point was that another not obvious downside is that every developer is they want to have core audience. They want to have users that keep returning to their game, and they play every day more and more and more. That's like your loyal audience. But the problem of rewarded video, if you want to monetize that audience with your video, is that usually, as far from my understanding, rewarded video comes mostly from performance. And if your users like play 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, they're going to interact less with those videos and convert less with the ads. That means that even if your like loyal audience will keep playing the game, the CPMs will fall, revenue will fall. And it's important to keep in mind that you have to somehow to solve that issue. Either you can sell on fixed CPM, either you can work with brands, they work on CPM, but it's important downsize.
I want to shed some light on the flip side of that. I think from a buying standpoint, we've seen retention rates of around 29% in the first 7 days of retention from a buyer, from user acquisition retaining. And day 14, I think we've seen about 50%, and day 30, we've seen about 71%. Agreed, all those are great numbers from a retention standpoint. But then I've also seen a lot of gamers that have struggled in the sense that when they start serving too many rewarded videos, if they were to do an A/B test and remove 2 to see if that better monetizes with these CPMs, they've had users that have never come back into the game just because they're so used to and they're hungry to see more and more ads, and their method of rolling to the next level is through the video. If you're snatching away that video, it hurts their sentiment. So it's almost like you're churning those users for the wrong reasons.
What about the lesser used formats or monetization models? Are there something that people should be paying attention to? Something, there any hidden revenue potential out there, in your opinion?
What we see is several companies in areas where the internet is not that fast, that banners are still generating a lot of revenue. You know, it's something that's is simple to implement, and the fill rate is really high. So we see that all the time.
But again, with the banners, probably there is a danger of accidental hit. And does it affect any kind of retention or LTV of the users or anything like that? If you have any insight on that.
It all depends on the way that you implement it. As all the monetization strategy, you need to think about it when you develop and design your game, right? If you try to add it in the middle of a game that's already there, you definitely will hurt the retention. But if you think about monetization when you are in the design phase, I think it's you can make a lot of money with banners yet.
So would the same developer and the same kind of game would segment their users, and if this user, say, is not on Wi-Fi, they would just show just the banners? And if the Wi-Fi is being used or the battery charge is full, then there are other potential formats that will be used?
Correct. If you are able to detect that in the region that you are trying to extract the most of your game, I would say try to do that.
So interestingly, very recently, I attended a hardcore midcore conference, and they mentioned something exactly around what you just said, is from a user experience perspective, they tend to rank rewarded video higher, followed by banners, which is really interesting. If you think about the user experience, you would think banners with the fat finger syndrome isn't the best, but actually for mid-core, hardcore games who are not used to having placements yet, and even the IAP moving into monetization, all of that bucket moving into trying ads for the first time, I think they look at banners as a safe bet versus having an intrusive, interstitial baked in, which is, again, a reactive strategy, not a proactive strategy. So I think that's to your point. And then I've also noticed native is another good one, which sits very native in your app sometimes. And I love using this phrase, and I'm going to use it again. Sometimes the native ads can be rather native. What that means is you tend to miss them. They don't even look like ads. So you will scroll past it, which means performance isn't the best, but when you look at user experience, they tend to rank banners than native. And if you look at the publisher's angle from gaming, native isn't that big yet. So I feel like there's a big gap in what they consider user experience, native being really high, but if you look at the implementation or the revenue that it brings, it's not that high. So I think there's still a little gap there that we'll see in 2018.
That's interesting. Yeah, we actually see native come in very strongly, and the revenue is higher than banner. So I've seen, right now, matter of fact, I'm working with a publisher that's non-gaming that has gone in the last year switching over all of their banner inventory to native. And it's because user reception is far, far better. So again, it depends where they're at in the game. If it's a interstitial just thrown in your face as often, for me as a user, it's very disconcerting. Like, why is this here? The opt-in videos are great, but it has to be in a smart place where what makes sense, and then you can drive good retention. But I agree, banner it surprised me. When I first went into advertising, I thought banner was a dinosaur, it was going away, but it's very useful. And I actually see in the next year or two, native is going to start replacing banner.
What about some dinosaur formats or dinosaur models, monetization models? Anything that you see that is going away? It's no longer.
For me personally, and I'm happy with this, just the shoved in your face interstitial. It can be very useful depending on what the app is, but it better make sense to the flow. So I think, aesthetically it has to fit with what you're doing. It has to make sense with what you're doing.
What about premium model? What do you think of premium model?
I think there's a session I missed here that I wish I'd seen, which was on Monument Valley, which yeah, I love. I have to say I missed the boat on that one. I only played it recently, and I was addicted to it. So premium does exist, and there is a definite core to it that's doing quite well.
So you're saying that if the app format fits the model, then it will perform well, but it doesn't work for majority of the apps. Any insight of what is the percentage of the premium ads on the market right now, and who's using it? Anything at all about the premium format?
You mean not free-to-play games, or?
Yeah. So I think that premium format has been. The profitability, the revenue-wise, has been decreasing over the years. So in any terms of projections, is it going to be decreased, is it going to die off, or is it going to be keep afloat?
I don't have a great insight on it, since my focus is free-to-play, and that on the ad side, of course, that makes sense. But I've actually seen a small resurgence in premium, just from my own experience as a user. Mm-hmm. So it's not dead. It's not. I think if anything, it's staying flat, and it depends on who's behind it. But obviously, free to play is you immediately surpass the one barrier of having to pay to play. And there are, of course, the models now where like you play the first 10 levels for free and then pay. So I don't know.
I think from the graph that we're missing, I remember mentioning.
It's a great graph.
Yeah, it is a great graph. I remember seeing premium at about a share of 23% in terms of revenue, which is way bottom for all of us who've seen the graph. It started off, I think, with reward video, it came into IAP, and then went down to subscription, native, and then I think the second last or the last one was premium, so it's about 20-23% from memory.
It keeps decreasing, yeah. It keeps decreasing. Actually, it's been it's been more and more useful back in 2000, maybe 14 and 15, and now it's been every year is decreasing. Premium is less and less popular, but I've actually read the prognosis that premium will become more profitable and more popular when more quality content is going to start kicking in. So like the Monument Valley that we've seen in the market right now, yeah, and these sort of apps that will start kicking in, I've read that people are prognosing.
And I will say, as a parent with small children, I much prefer to buy the app instead of having a free app that has a lot of ads that are not appropriate. So there's a definite market for it.
Definitely, yeah. And parents tend to spend a lot more on kids than themselves. Yeah. So as a parent here. Yeah. Any creative monetization methods in actual live apps that you've shared, like Marcelo shared about the what was the name of the publisher? Future Play. Yeah. Something else that maybe somebody can share just to start the ideas in the bright heads of the audience.
Since I came from like publisher who had a game publisher, but maybe you remember that they used to have very cool-looking native ads, native banners in Katsrop. So I have a weakness for game developers who, despite that native is not very suitable for games, still have that type of format in their games. So I'd like to back Sega, Sonic, when they actually show native ads, despite that, again, it's not very common to see native ads in games. So I doubt that it earns them a lot of money compared to rewarded video. But still, if you have place to monetize, to show, and it won't be intrusive, why not to show it?
I've actually seen a good example of native ad in a game. It was a word game, it was a word on, so it's like a sort of Scrabble kind of game, and it was when there were credits, at the very bottom there was a native ad. And the publisher shared the data that actually paid quite well. So that could be another idea. Anyone else?
Sure. I actually recently saw two examples. One was around dots. It's a very typical casual gaming app that most of us use. I've never actually seen dots go the branding route. And what was interesting is they were tapping into the non-gaming audience using an Olympic gymnast with three glowing balls. And it took me about 15 to 30 seconds to understand I was looking at a gaming ad and not a branding ad, because the only thing that got stuck in my head was the three dots, so literally the glowing dots. And I thought that was a really interesting take for gamers to go into an audience where it's more, they're describing what their brand does to them. It's pacifying. It's casual game, but it was very difficult to understand for the first 15, 20 seconds whether it was a game or am I looking at a brand. I thought that was an interesting take to tap into an audience that you wouldn't usually tap into. And the second one, I think, was a Machine Zone game, which was specifically playing with rewarded playable. What that means is they would give you, it was a new launch, and what they'd done is they'd done a 15-second opt-in with the video that described how to play the game. And then the next 15 seconds out of the 30-second slot was literally the gameplay itself. So they had baked the demoed video along with the actual playable with an end card at the end. I thought that was beautifully executed.
That's a very good idea.
And I would say an example I've seen this works well is combining ad formats that play off each other. So rewarded video, I've seen a lot of success where you cap rewarded video at 2 or 4 per day. And if you have offer wall or willing to do offer wall, when you find people to hit that cap, you give them a link and say, well, if you want, you can go do more offers. The reason why that worked well is there are people that want to grind. Offer wall tends to have a lot of drop off. People don't necessarily want to install something just to get credit. But it worked amazingly well because the CPMs are quite a bit higher on offer wall. Mm-hmm. So you can play around with it. You can just play one ad after another and still have good retention.
That's very interesting. Speaking of offer wall, what do you feel about this format? Is it still going to be trending?
Yeah, I think offer wall is here to stay. It has to be in the right place.
Has been for generations.
You know,
it feels like
exactly. There were times in the past where advertisers wanted to avoid offer wall because they felt it was just too much click fraud. Mm-hmm. But inside, as a game developer, there were definite places, especially as you trended more towards hardcore, midcore. You know, at Kabam, we were famously no ads at all. But if you looked around, you would find the ads, and it was on offer wall. The trigger was really low. You had to be playing for 2 weeks, not have spent anything in the game, go to the store inside the game, scroll off the screen, and then you would find a link for earn free gems. That was the offer wall. But it actually, for the amount of money we made at Kabam, it had still a material impact.
To be honest, I'm so skeptical about offer walls like right now. So I wonder whether they drive any results for advertisers now. Maybe you can share. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't see a lot of results in overall with our customers.
You mean for the UA standpoint?
Yeah, it looks like it's really going in the opposite direction of everything else.
we touch in the UA a little bit over here. So the best incentive format would not be the offer wall. That would you recommend? What would be the best format for the incentive? Something else than offer wall would be rewarded video. That's the only other option that we can use, right?
Yeah, I think it's substituting naturally the offer wall with rewarded video. That I think you can control better the experience and everything else, and have a higher eCPM as well.
I think that mix example was very interesting as well, with the video as well as the offer wall combination. I think that would work.
Yeah.
And from an advertiser perspective, a lot of the offers in the offer wall that are effective are more the CPE, where it's a cost per engagement. So they have to not just install, but play first level, get past the, and then they see a response, they have retention from it. So it's definitely to be aware of. If the advertiser doesn't like it, you'll not earn money.
Agreed. If no one else has anything to add, we're going to be moving on to our last question. It's about the prediction for monetization in 2018. What do you think we're going to see in the following years, or in the following year?
I think so a lot of new things coming in terms of playable ads. Playable ads are a bit tricky nowadays because it's very limited. You cannot really use for 3D, or there's some restrictions with 3D. And there's new formats coming in HTML5 that will be easier to use. But again, I think you need to create your monetization from the beginning. You need to think about it, and whatever the format you are going to use, it needs to be well planned from the beginning, I think.
Trends for monetization. I want to say, I guess, two things. One would be, I can see a lot more IAP first revenue models moving into the ads monetization model. So I expect a lot more of that mix, where you're not just IAP or not just ads monetization. It'll be more of a mixed approach. And then the second thing is probably something that we ourselves, personally, MoPub is also working on, will pre-advanced bidding. I think that's a trend that's picking up from the online space, coming very quickly into the in-app space. And I think once we get the ball rolling with more and more advertisers and more DSPs and networks competing for the same priority for a publisher's supply, the monetization behavior of how we republishes the eCPMs they currently get will change. So I think those are the two key big ones that I see coming for 2018.
If you speak about like outside of ads, like in monetization of apps in general, I think like well there are lots of that we can say, but there are two clear trends from my perspective. First one is LiveOps. LiveOps is now like, it's not a trend, it's already like a must have for game companies. But as far as I like see in the market, it's mostly done for in-app purchase for companies that earn more on in-apps, while there are growing number of companies that earn more and more on ads only, like super casual games like Voodoo, like Ketchup, other games. And what they already do, and I think they tend to do more, is LiveOps for their even like super simple games, but to keep players engaged, give them more content, so ads will be like developing, even if it's still like super simple game. And the second one is through user-generated content. So if we see, for example, what Glue does with a design home with Roblox, when developers give the users like mechanism, like tools to create something. The first one, they now has to spend less on creating content because it's so expensive for users, for companies to keep their players engaged, to roll new levels like every week. And second part is, for example, if we look at Roblox and similar cases, when you give tools to develop to your users to build something and to sell, to earn money for themselves, you can get your share. So it will be your like new revenue stream for the company itself.
Yeah, I think Roblox is phenomenal. They've done a great job at that. And it reminds me as well, with a lot of the streaming and esports coming up, Twitch and others have looked at ways to allow the top level streamers to earn a portion of the revenue that they get off of it. So that'll be interesting to watch as well.
Very, very interesting. If nobody has anything to add, we can move on to the questions from the audience, if somebody has any questions. And if not, then we can all go and eat.
Oh, food.
Food.
There's a question here. I'll tell you what, let me do this.
So we've tried non-gaming ads in our game, and they monetize. We get far less money for them than game ads, and obviously we don't want game ads in our game because cannibalization. So are non-game ads growing? Will they grow in the future? Because they're the kind of ads we prefer.
I want to comment that because this is, again, coming back to featured play. They don't bother to have other games ads on their games at all. They did an analysis and there's no influence because the gamers will be using and playing different games all the time. So, and they will see ads from games on Facebook, social media, TV, whatever. So you are losing money for not showing ads, and it's not going to stop them to play other games at all. So this is a real data coming from a company that's using and making a lot of money. So
we were doing that research when I was still in the Unity Ads team with the Future Play guys, and there was no cannibalization at all.
If you're going to lose your player, you will go to lose it like anyway.
So it doesn't matter which ad.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
I should just go with game ads.
Correct.
I would say non-gaming is also growing. I do agree with everyone else here. There's less probability of cannibalization. If they have to leave the game, they will leave the game anyway. But that's not to say that the non-gaming categories are not growing. They're definitely growing more and more into the in-app space.
I mean, if you look at King are doing their own ads, but they're not going to do games. In the past, there has been cannibalization. So they're focusing more on big brands than Coca-Cola and everything, which pay more. So when that finally happens.
I think it's a quick trend that's picking up very, very quickly. You'll be surprised how many, if I took a top 200 and 250 A domains that are live for the most engaging playables and rewarded videos, it'll probably be a 50-50 split between gaming and non-gaming. So the pie is pretty big. Yeah.
Sorry.
I was just going to add, keep in mind, with the King, they're big enough to where they do the direct deal with Coca-Cola. Same with Zynga, we did really well with American Express. But if you have that skill, you can do the direct deal. Otherwise, I'm very excited though with what Trika is saying, with the brands finally getting stronger in games.
Yeah, all I was going to add is it's probably also worth noting it's probably more value in looking at how the ad fits in the flow of the play than worrying whether it's cannibalizing or not. Knowing you've got the right positioning can be dramatically more effective anyway. I mean, that's it. That's something we've seen back in the days when I was doing that. There's one more question. I want to run into that, and then we'll call it close.
Yeah, hello. It's a question, I suppose, mainly for Tarika. What sort of average eCPMs are you seeing with video ads, rewarded video ads? Both the brands and gaming ads.
So it depends on seasonality. So just that the fact that we are still in January, the brands still continue to do spend in games. And I think they're evolving and getting more and more educated that it's around the audience and not the content of the game itself. They're after the audience. And I think they understand that at this stage. Q4 has been a very strong quarter anyway for eCPMs to grow because they have a lot of direct deals and they do get that 30-second exposure with an opt-in intent, which they don't get from any others. So eCPM was, I would say, anywhere in the range, Q4 might be a skewed number to give you, but it could be in the range of 5 to 6 like any other video would.
Anyone else about the eCPMs? Well, it also will depend on the format of your app specifically. So for example, if you have an app that monetizes on all sorts of ads, and this is for adults, then I would say that rewarded video would pay you the most. And it will go to the skippable video and then static interstitial and move on to the banner. Of course, banner would be the last one. But if you have, again, the kids app, then don't expect rewarded video to pay you much. Rewarded video probably will drop to the third place of the most profitable, and the skippable video actually will probably, or the static interstitial will be even more profitable for you. So it will depend on you should experiment with different ad formats and see what will be profitable for your game specifically.
I was doing a review with a client of mine relatively recently, and historically he's always done rewarded ad only, but then he experimented with interstitial and saw that when he added it, it didn't have any negative impact. But actually, when he took it out again, he lost quite a considerable amount of revenue. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were going to.
Yeah, I would say that you need to pay attention to your eCPM and to make changes really fast on your strategy. You need to look at it every day, and if it's possible, to change and to optimize every day your strategy, because that's the way that you are going to improve your CPM, whatever is the ad that you are using, or the ad format that you are using. Pay attention for it, get the data there, look at it, and just try to negotiate with those guys, and extract the most of them.